Hello and welcome to the Nintendo Switch 2 countdown. We are now in week 3, which means there are only 8 weeks left to go until the Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2. We recently got word that it's going to be airing at 2 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Central European, 6 a.m. Pacific, and 9 a.m. Eastern. So it's pretty standard for their Nintendo Direct timings. So not really a huge surprise there. And obviously it's still on the 2nd of April. So yeah, just under 8 weeks to go now, which is pretty exciting. So this week we're going to be talking about Zelda on the Switch 2, what games we're going to be getting, roughly when we can expect them, and that sort of thing. So let's get into it. Obviously we've recently gotten 2 pretty big Zelda games, being Tears of the Kingdom in 2023, and then Echoes of Wisdom just last year. So it seems very unlikely we're going to get a brand new 3D or 2D game anytime within the first 2 or 3 years, I would say. So the first game we're going to get is almost certainly going to be some kind of port, remaster, remake. Even remake, I think, is unlikely in this first year. I think it is going to be more basic ports and remasters. The most likely seems to be probably just a Breath of the Wild port or remaster, or whatever you want to call it, which will just be Breath of the Wild itself, running on Switch 2 hardware. So there was that rumored showing behind closed doors at Gamescom, I think in 2023, that apparently showed off Breath of the Wild running at 4K 60 frames per second with like no load times or something like that. Yeah, just something like that. Obviously we've seen it thanks to emulation, and it does look pretty damn good. So that would be pretty exciting to get that. Not the most exciting, obviously, it's a game we've already played. Honestly, I'm a huge Zelda fan. I don't know if I would even play it. If it's free, I would play it, even if it's just for like an hour. But then I bet once I get started on that, I bet I will end up playing more. But I don't think I would end up playing through the whole game again. I'd probably just try and wrap up whatever, or assuming you can transfer saves across, I would probably just try and wrap up anything I was missing from my previous time playing, which I think I've still got some shrines to do, so that'd be alright. But yeah, not super exciting, and there is a chance they would also do Tears of the Kingdom. I've got way more left in the Kingdom, so that would be better for me. But I have a feeling it's just going to be Breath of the Wild, maybe the following year, or maybe much later. Another reason it makes sense is that they have been remaking to some degree these Zelda games kind of in order. So they did Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, Skyward Sword. I think they called that HD. Yeah, they did. Skyward Sword HD. So now the next in line is Breath of the Wild, even though what are we at? 8 years old it'll be next month. But yeah, it does make sense. And with the presumed much bigger jump in graphical power from the Switch, it does make sense to do that. Personally, I hope that this kind of thing is free, or at least just like Sony do with their upgrade, like $10, £10, just to upgrade to the new version. I think that would be fair. If they sell it as a brand new $60 title, I think that's going to annoy a lot of people, unless the update is like huge. It probably won't be. Knowing Nintendo, it'll be like the Luigi's Mansion 2 Donkey Kong Country Returns thing, where it's like, well, it does look really nice, but there's these couple of things that they could have done that they didn't, and maybe even one thing that actually looks worse somehow. I bet even just the light changes will probably upset some people. Yeah, I think that's the most likely. The other thing we could get in the first year of the Switch 2 is the much waited and anticipated for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD ports, as in the HD ones they've already made ported to Switch. If this does happen, I would assume it would be a Switch 1 title that you can play on Switch 2. hopefully with some extra bells and whistles on the Switch too, but I won't be surprised if it's quite a basic thing where it's just maybe it'll be able to use DLSS to up-res to 4K and that's it. But I mean, that itself would be pretty amazing to play those two games in 4K. But yeah, I think they primarily will be Switch 1 titles. And then we'll just be playing those versions on Switch 2. I don't know that they would do both Breath of the Wild and those two ports in the same year. I think it'd probably be one or the other. So maybe it'll be we get Breath of the Wild at launch or close to launch of the Switch 2, and then those ports maybe say January next year. So obviously within the first year still, but not in the same calendar year. And then that gives them a bit of a gap to then release another title in the future. As to what that title would be, there's a lot of talk. I don't think there's even any actual rumors. I think people are just talking about it because they assume that there is going to be an Ocarina of Time remake. Ocarina of Time is my childhood game. It's what got me into gaming, that and Super Mario 64 and Tomb Raider. But yeah, Ocarina of Time is what I remember as being my childhood game. It means a lot to me. It was my favorite game of all time until Breath of the Wild. And I'd still put it, if I'm being honest, I'd probably put it at number 2 behind Breath of the Wild. But it's not so fun to have 2 Zelda games at the top, so I usually say it's lower down. But yeah, seeing, like, when people say remake, I'm imagining like Resident Evil 2 style remake, or Final Fantasy 7 even, where it is fully remade from the ground up. Hopefully, specifically for Switch 2, not as like a Switch 1 game that they're now porting to Switch 2, so I can take full advantage of that. And I think seeing a remake like that for Ocarina of Time that looks as good as it does in my head, I think it will make me cry. Like, of happiness. Because that would be very special. I do worry that, obviously, Ocarina of Time is a early 64 game, so it does have a lot of issues with controls and just feeling a bit stiff and awkward. If it's being remade from the ground up, it would presumably solve those issues. And I'd hope they'd go into some of the things like, I remember some of the puzzle solutions just being, in this day and age, a little bit obtuse, and you don't want it to be super handholdy, but you also don't want to be stuck not knowing where to go the whole time. So I imagine they would solve things like that. But then I do worry that if you do that too much, does it not feel like Ocarina of Time anymore? I trust Nintendo, so I don't think they would make it that different, but a little cause for concern. But yeah, just seeing the locations in 4K, 60 frames per second would be amazing. I would love if they used this Ocarina of Time remake to kind of start looking at the combat of the games, because the combat of Breath of the Wild I find good enough for what it is. But when you've played 100 hours of that, and then you go into Tears of the Kingdom and you have 100 more hours of that, more depending on how deep into it you go, it got pretty boring and repetitive, and at the end, like the final kind of run up to the boss, I was just running past as many enemies as I could to just make sure I didn't have to waste my swords and everything and just not have to deal with it, because the way they do the difficulties, they just make the enemies more bullet spongy, and that just isn't very fun. So yeah, I'd hope that they would use this time remake to see what a Zelda, a modern day Zelda, could be like. Whenever we talk about combat, we always are going to mention the Souls games, and I would like them to take some inspiration from there, but don't make it super hard or super complex. I think taking some inspiration just from how it feels and how it makes the combat fun, I think would be really awesome. And obviously you've already got the Sword and Shield fighting style that often uses, so yeah, you can use that. It'd be cool if they could make more of the magic. So obviously you have Bin's fire. The way it works in the original is you just activate it and it stops, and then like a cutscene happens, and then it damages everyone. It'd be cool if you make it more active in the combat, and then also get more like combat spells, because I think that was it. I remember there was Aurore's Wind, but isn't that the one that just teleports you? Yeah. Some being able to use like just a few magic spells, like maybe give them a magic meter, but also maybe just make it like a really long cooldown. You can only do it like once every few fights or something. I think that could be cool. Dungeons, I think they would keep pretty much as is. Hopefully I'd like it to be a bit more feeling open, where like it's not you're going for a door and then it's loading up the next room, and then you go into the room and you're in that room. Just have it feel like a big area that you're exploring. I mean, if they are doing like a fully like Final Fantasy VII remake style, where it is like updating everything, and I guess the temples would probably change quite a lot, but hopefully keeping that original spirit. And that would be pretty exciting, honestly, because being able to essentially replay Ocarina of Time for the first time again is what I've dreamed of for a long time. Yeah, that would be very awesome. But like I said, I don't think there's any actual rumours, wishes, expectations. But it does make sense. So I hope if it's not going to be Ocarina of Time, I don't think we're getting a 2D, 3D Zelda anytime soon. So I think some kind of remake is the most likely. Maybe we would finally get the Oracles of Ages and Seasons remakes. Possibly. Maybe they'd even go as far back as Link to the Past and try and do those. But that's the risky one, because that's one that could annoy a lot of people if they don't do it well. I wonder if HD 2D would be the way to go for that. Work with Square Enix in doing that. We'll see. But I think Link to the Past is probably the least likely. But maybe instead of a remake, maybe they just do some kind of spin-off. I don't have any ideas for what that could be. Link's Crossbow Training 2 with the mouse. Ooh, hold on. So there's the Joy-Con mouse support, supposedly. Maybe they will want to utilize that in something. Ooh. So that one of the genres the mice would be best suited to is real-time strategy. I would actually be very impressed if Nintendo want to do something crazy like the Zelda real-time strategy, where you have like your different... Ooh, yeah. Okay, that's something I want. I would just prefer a more traditional Zelda, but if they're going to be doing something like that, does sound like a cool idea for them to try. As for whatever this next big game is going to be, as for when it's going to arrive, I think it makes sense to do Breath of the Wild or whatever, like port this year alongside the launch. Next year, probably just do those Wind Waker, Twilight Princess ports, and then that gives them, if they do that early next year, then it gives them a long time before they have to release another Zelda to keep up with the calendar year cycle. Although I think they did miss that in 2022 anyway, but that's because they delayed Tears of the Kingdom. So yeah, that would then put us into 2027, which feels ages away. So maybe they could get it out by the 6th, if not, I think 2027. It's time we see a quote-unquote new Zelda game, whether it be a remake, spin-off, whatever. I don't think it's going to be a mainline title, unless it's a remake. We will get a new 2D Zelda at some point in Switch 2's life. Obviously, we literally just got the new one less than 6 months ago. I think it's 5 months ago as of recording this in February 2025. We just got word it sold nearly 4 million, I think it's 3.9 million or something like that. That seems pretty good. Obviously, it's nowhere near the 3D ones, but I imagine it also doesn't take as much time and resources to make, so I think they'll be happy with those sales. So they will probably be looking to get one out again, whether it is a remake of Ocarina Oracles or Link to the Past first. That's a possibility, but I would love it if they would do a new one. My question is whether it would be continuing this kind of Breath of the Wildification of the 2D games that Echoes of Wisdom started with, the more free-form puzzle solving and combat. Personally, I would prefer it to go back to being traditional. I don't think you need both the 3D and the 2D games to be following the same formula. I think it makes much more sense to have them be doing different things. And the traditional are still my favorite, even though Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time. I still prefer traditional Zelda overall. So it would benefit me if at least one of the styles of Zelda game, being 3D and 2D, at least one of them can be traditional. It'd be kind of cool if they could like alternate. So one time we get 3D traditional, and then we get a 2D open air style, whatever they want to call it. And then it flips around the next time, or we get 2 of one and then 2 of the other, or whatever. However they want to do it. I just don't want traditional Zelda to be dead, basically. Even if it means getting a, well, I guess Grezzo is a third party. I'll have to check that, but I'm pretty sure they are. But yeah, getting somebody else to make a traditional Zelda game while they're making these open worlds, if that's what they want to do. Yeah, they could be getting the next 2D game out a bit quicker, because they are smaller scale. They should take less time. So with it being 2024 that we got the last one, maybe they can get it out by 2027 is probably a bit of a push, but possibly 2027, 2028. And then that wouldn't be too long to wait, especially if we do get a big remake before that, and that wouldn't be so bad. Obviously the big question is when we're going to get the next 3D Zelda game, the next new 3D Zelda game. I do think it's very far away. There is the possibility that they've been working on it since a year before Tears of the Kingdom came out, because they have been on record of saying that the last year of development was solely for polishing the game. So that wouldn't have required everyone on the development team to be there for. So they could have easily had the pre-production start on the new one, and by now they would be 2022 to 2023 to 2024, be like 2.5 years into development on it. So it could only be 2.5 years away. But considering how long it took them to make Tears of the Kingdom, which was supposed to be a quick and simple sequel to Breath of the Wild, and it was their longest developed Zelda game ever, being 7 years. I think nearly 7 years. Who knows how long this next one's going to take, because obviously we don't know what form it's going to be. It could be another Breath of the Wild sequel, or Tears of the Kingdom sequel, or it could be just another game in that vein, that kind of open air vein, but brand new map and everything. Or they could go back to making a traditional one, or they could try and reinvent everything all over again, something brand new and different once more. Honestly, I think all but the direct sequel approach is exciting to me. Breath of the Wild being my favorite game, I do love that. So if they were to do that in just a brand new world with a brand new story, brand new combat and abilities and structure and things like that, that would be very awesome. I would personally, if I could pick, I would pick to do a traditional one. It's been a long time since we had a traditional one. I mean, Skyward Sword would be the last one, which was 2011. It's like nearly 15 years. And even Skyward Sword, you can kind of argue, almost wasn't traditional, because it was so linear and handholdy, and you didn't have that kind of, you did with the Great Sky, but it didn't feel the same as Hyrule Field, and you going to all the different places. But yeah, I do count that as a traditional one. But if they were, I would love them to do a new traditional one. I just don't think it's likely with how Eiji Onoma has spoken about how he loves the freeform approach to the puzzles and everything. And I get it. It's done very well for them. It's taken Zelda to be one of their absolute biggest franchises, which it always was. But this is now on a whole nother level. With both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I think, being in the 20 million sold. Maybe Breath of the Wild has hit 30. I don't think it's quite hit 30. But yeah, together they've hit over 50 million sales, which is crazy. I think the previous best Zelda game was closer to like 10 million, if memory serves. Yeah, they're definitely going to be happy with it. I can understand them wanting to keep making it, and if they do genuinely enjoy it, it makes total sense. Yeah, I definitely don't want it to be a direct sequel again. I do want them to at least do a new world and things like that. If they could somehow combine the two, that'd be ideal. So really what I would want from that is like not just getting your 4 abilities at the start of the game and then that's it. I would love to get some new ones later on that actually change how you approach puzzles and combat and that. And there was a bit of that with the what they call them, I think the champions or something like that you get into the kingdom. That does change things a bit, but it doesn't really make a massive difference to how you approach puzzles and combat at least, which is what I would like to see. Even just something like getting hook shot later in the game that lets you, rather than starting climbing from the bottom of a cliff, you can go a bit further up, and then in combat you can use it to pull small enemies towards you or to pull you towards big enemies. Something like that would be fun to get like through the game. Or I mean, if with it being open air, it could just be something you find, or maybe you don't. That would be cool too. As for if they're going to do another complete reinvention, I have no idea what that could be. I mean, yeah, if they're doing that, I think like the only real thing that keeping it being a Zelda game would be the world, and which essentially is what happened with Breath of the Wild. And like I say, it's my favorite game of all time. So maybe whatever they do next would be that again, but I think it's probably a bit too soon to be doing that. I think we could go for another traditional and another one before trying to do that, because I don't think people are sick of it yet. Personally, I am a little bit. I definitely didn't enjoy Tears of the Kingdom as much because I'd already played through Breath of the Wild. Similarly to how I felt with Elden Ring and the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. Both were great, but just like getting all of them, like my save file on Elden Ring now is 200 hours. Just playing the same game for that long, it just gets to you a bit. Even though I enjoyed both this and Breath of the Wild immensely, like they're my 2 favorite games of all time. Yeah, just you can't have too much of a good thing, I think. We can expect that probably. If they did start 2022, I guess maybe we could see 2027, 2028. But I think we'll be lucky to get it by. Probably be lucky to get it by 2029. But by 2030, I think we should have it by then. Unless it's gone through development hell, maybe there's another pandemic, who knows what's going to happen to potentially delay it. But yeah, we will get it at some point during Switch 2's life, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, that's what I think about Zelda on the Switch 2. I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think we're going to get constant releases and things. Even if they are just ports and remasters. And one thing I didn't talk about actually, which I will just briefly mention, I would love to see them do another indie team allowed to work on the series, see what they can do with it. I don't really have any specific ones. I mean, Yacht Club would probably be my go-to, but they're making Mina the Hollower, which is their kind of new take on the Zelda, the Game Boy era Zelda. So I don't think they need to actually work on a Zelda game, because they're essentially doing it just without the license. But yeah, just give it to some, even if it's not to make a traditional style game, maybe it's like Cadence of Hyrule, and it's more taking what the indie team is good at and just giving it a Zelda skin. That could be really cool. I don't know. I can't think of any specific examples of what that could be, but Hollow Knight? Make a Zelda Hollow Knight, why not? Although, if that's the case, we won't be seeing it for 20 years, by the way. It seems Team Cherry seemed to work. But yeah, we're definitely going to be getting a lot of cool Zelda stuff on Switch 2. I think there's a lot to look forward to. So next week, I'm going to be talking about Super Smash Bros., which I think is probably going to be quite early on in the lifetime of the Switch 2, so I think we'll be seeing it quite soon. So yeah, I'll be discussing what I expect from that and what we can look forward to. So thank you for joining me this week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.